I want to say this. Oh, perfect. I want to say great recording right now as I'm about to say like I have to like hesitate because I feel like I don't want it to come across as an ego thing at all. But on paper, I was number one on the team. I was number one in the market center. I was bringing good money to my family. And but I was burning out. I was reaching that ceiling again. And so it was when I was the majority of the production, it was good. I was making money. It just I knew it was heavy. It wasn't aligned. Like I never saw my kids' sports like ever. I missed them all. So it wasn't aligned with how I envisioned my life to be.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that's when you realized that you couldn't stay the primary producer, or what realization did that bring you? So you were missing everything, it wasn't working, and then what?
That was, I mean, I knew it for some time, right? I knew that but I was just a hustler. I just kept going. I just kept pressing through it. So I guess that's what we've all been calling like the messy middle. Like I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I just kept plugging in and just kept plugging in. And then the other biggest thing was I felt like I was letting people down. And I think that was my realization that I definitely needed to make changes. And not only um, like on my personal, on my family side, of not showing up for my kids' sports and things because I was always working, but for the agents that had come and joined me,
Hmm.
I felt like I was letting them down and wasn't performing my best for them. So I realized it. I think, and I'll talk more about. I think one of the things is I realized it long before I took action on it.
Yeah.
So it just was something I knew that I needed to change, and I needed to figure out how to do that.
So I think a lot of people do that, like it's not working,
Mhm.
but you don't commit to actually making the changes that you need to make. So was there like a specific moment or something that got you out of like knowing that you needed to do something different and actually doing it?
Yes. And it's probably like not the best reason. But honestly, it was out of necessity. My youngest was in basketball. All my kids did sports. My youngest was in basketball. And and I'll talk about it a little bit in a minute because I want to talk about building a team within a team and the showing specialist model. But I had already implemented that into my business. And so at this point, I was doing the showing specialist model. I had raised that year, I had closed 84 transactions. And I was driving my son to his basketball tournament. And as I was driving, half of my eye was grayed out. And I thought, oh, that's not good. Um, but I felt okay. I didn't feel any pain or anything. So I just went to the basketball tournament all weekend. And then after the tournament, I had a 2-day business meeting. And I thought, I got to get that looked at. But I went to the two day conference. You were there, Jacqueline. And on the second day of the conference, I woke up and the half of my eye that was grayed out was now red. And I thought, that can't be good. I thought, like, literally, I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if I have like a brain bleed. Like, I'm just thinking of those things as I'm sitting in the conference. And then so I still stayed the 2 days in the conference. So then after that, I was driving home and I picked up the phone and I called the eye doctor and thought, well, I better get this looked at and set an appointment. And like 60 seconds later, the actual doctor called me. And long story short, the next morning, I was taken in for emergency eye surgery. My retina had detached 3/4 of the way around. And the doctor said to me, like, were you in an accident? Did you hit your head? I'm like, nope. He's like, do you have a lot of stress in your life? And I thought, oh boy. And honestly, like, the that was the start of it. And like I said, kind of not really the best reason, but I was off work for 3 months after that. And for 12 days, you have to lie on your stomach as it heals. And when you're off work for 3 months, like we were making good money, I had money in the bank account. And 3 months without working is financially impactful on people. And what I realized at that point as well is we were okay. If we didn't have the savings, that could have been different. But at that moment, I realized the impact of running a team is I'm also not only financially responsible and a contributor to my family, but I'm financially responsible to my team. And it was that, yeah, and honestly, it was that situation where I was like, I need to change this because if my team's growth revolves around my production and I am paying the staff and I'm paying all the expenses, and all of a sudden I can't work, that
Mhm.
was honestly the moment where I was like, I need to figure out how to do this that no matter if I am physically able to, or let's say something nice, I want to go and lay on the beach for 3 months in Hawaii instead of in the hospital. I should have a team that can withstand no matter what. So that was the big kind of eye opener for me. I knew it before, but that was the moment where I'm like, all right, I need to figure this out and make the change.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say I love that, but I don't love what happened to you. I love what came out of it though, because it caused you to grow in a way that you hadn't really been, I guess, willing to do before. A lot
Yeah.
of times we'll move more away from pain than we will towards pleasure, and that's just the reality of how we operate a lot of times as humans. Okay, so tell us, how did you start, like, what's the first thing you did? So you decided, okay, now I have to do something about this. This is a vulnerable position to not even just for yourself, but to put the team in, your staff, everything. So what was the first thing that you did?
So to get real,
Yeah.
um, real is just knowing my own personal numbers. And since that happened, the more that I talk about my story, the more that I talk in a group, the more that I talk one on one, it used to be embarrassing, and now I'm like, I'm not alone, which is why, like, when you asked me to be part of this call, I'm like, absolutely, like, I want to yell it from the rafters because I did feel alone in it. The very first thing, and it seems crazy to say, because we were successful,
Hmm.
but I couldn't tell you as a family or a team how much I needed to make every month to survive. I didn't know that number. Um, I, um, I knew my goals. I knew what we wanted to hit, but I didn't know that bottom. And so I wrote it down. I remember Ross Clausen, he asked me the question was, what is your zero? And knowing that what it takes to survive, you absolutely have to make in order to break even every single month. So that was the first thing I did is I sat down with my husband and we got real about finances and what are we spending and where are we going. And just all of the required stuff, mortgage, car payment, like things, whatever is like fixed expenses, your zero. And then I did that with my business. So first I got clear on the zero. And I call that my need. And then I got clear on what my want is. Okay, now that we know how much we need to survive, what do we want to make? And then I did that with my agents and I sat down with my agents because I realized that as a leader, if I didn't know that, I obviously wasn't coaching and training to that. So I brought them along the ride with me and figured out what their zero was and what they needed to hit in order to break even, and then what their goals were. And when I did this, one of my agents, she's been with me for 12 years. She's at the end of her 12th year, going into 13 years. Um, she started when we were doing this. She was a single mom. She lived at home in her mom's house in the basement with her daughter. And now, today, she owns eight, maybe nine doors of
Wow.
investment properties. It's pretty cool. So, number one, I started with my need and my want. And then number two, and kind of talking about what Sarah brought up earlier, was the team within a team. I realized that I needed leverage. So I sat down. I knew that, and I knew that for a long time, but the action item, the fix to get me to where I needed to be, is I literally sat down on a yellow notepad and wrote down every single thing that I did in my world, everything. And until I couldn't think of anything else. And then I went back and I figured out what are the things that I am uniquely good at, that with my time on task and what I was focused on, like what am I uniquely good at? And that was production based, that could help build revenue. And I literally circled it on the page, and I had about three or four things circled. And then my mission was, how do I leverage everything else off my plate? So that was the first, figuring out the leverage piece of it. So I started working on that sheet, and kind of luckily I was already with a team and organization that had the operations and this and the systems down. So some of those we needed some additional systems, so we had those put in place. Um, and and then I can kind of break that down again. But the biggest piece for me that I was focused on also was my personal life. What could I leverage in my personal life, but what could I leverage also in my business? And at the time that I was closing on average about 65 homes a year, was again when I reached my peak that I started the showing specialist model. And and the thing is, I would say when it comes to all of this, every single thing, when you were asking me about this topic, I realized that the decision to do it and the change is almost instantaneous. It's the him and hawing about making the decision that took the long time. And
Mm.
even like when I went from, that year, I was what I was talking about, closing 84 transactions. I remember the weekend that it happened. I had four buyers. We already did the buyer consult. They're already pre-approved. We had all the showings scheduled. I had my schedule all weekend filled up. And our partner called, and his cousin, who lived in my hometown, wanted to go see a house. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I do not have a free minute. Like, I'm booked showing back to back, hopping from client to client. And but because he was looking in my town, I thought I need to figure out a way to do this. So four of my team members that were sitting with me there in the cubicle, I was thinking to myself, how do I get one of these buyers over to somebody else? And so I could squeeze his cousin in. And I said, hey, you guys, I have four buyers pre-approved, all set up for showings. Would any one of you be willing to take one of the buyers? And all four of them put their hands up. So I was like, oh, hold on a second. So they each took one of the buyers. So a couple of the pivotal moment there for me is I went and showed his cousin. So I was only gone for about 2 hours that weekend. I got to see my daughter's, I can't even say this, and my daughter's like 30 now. I can't even say this without getting emotional. That was the very first time I got to see her baseball game. Um, and the last time that I ever missed any of their sports. Um, Monday, when I showed up on Monday, four out of the five buyers were pending. And I just had this like amazing weekend with my family. So it was that moment that I'm like, I'm never going on another showing again. And I have not been on a showing in 7 years. So again, I knew I needed it, but it was when that, I guess, pain and pressure point happened that I was just like, and it was solved just like that, like instantly solved. So those were, you were asking me kind of what I was doing, I think
Hmm.
number one, figuring out first what you need is probably the most critical piece. That's what I think is missing. It was missing in me, and I hear that in a lot of people that I talk to, figuring what you need, figuring out what the goals are, figuring out the people around you, like your spouse or your team members, like what do they need as well? And then building a system around that and building leverage and digging it apart and yeah, so that those are the kind of the two things that I would say was the first two things that I did.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna jump in here,
Yeah.
Tamara, and ask you a follow-up question to that. Um, when you said you knew your number, why do you, or going back, why do you think you let it get to that point where, our industry tends to celebrate working hard and writing offers at games and doing like our industry is broken in as a whole. And so why do you think you let it get to that level before like why do you think why do you think it happened like that?
For the numbers piece of it, for understanding the
Just your
numbers.
time, the time invested, like you were booked back to back and
Yeah, I think I've always been a quote unquote hard worker, right? So I think that just felt natural.
mhm,
Um, I will say, like, our family situation is my two oldest kids were from my husband's previous marriage, all my children. Um, and I've been with them since they were 3 and 6. But I say that because we had a blended family. So, like, for example, every sporting game there was, you know, their mother, their stepdad, my husband, two sets of grandparents, cousins, right? I was like never really attached a they're okay without me. I'm gonna go make money. And so I don't know really if I put too much thought into it other than I can, so I will.
yeah.
And I was just a hard worker. I think the biggest thing out of that, like the question that pops in my head or the answer to what you just said is I knew how to do it. I didn't know how to slow it down or stop doing it or work on the right things. I was working on everything. Um,
Yeah. I
how did
I
I
think
let it I
go
was going
ahead.
to say, how did I let it get to that? I think that's easy when you're making a ton of money. Like
Yes.
when you're making a ton of
Yes.
money, you feel good, right? And you've got
Yeah.
things and you feel good.
And I think that was the answer I was looking for because what I know is that all of us can relate to that. Like we know if we put the work in, we can create immediate results for our own production. And the only way you can increase what you're netting is knowing what your hourly rate is and leveraging things out of anyone that you can hire underneath that number. So I think it's important. Like, I just wanted to pause and make sure that all of our panelists, like, we realize that the chat is not live. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. But I think it's important for you guys to take your net number and truly know what your hourly rate is right now. Because if you can leverage out for someone less than that, right, it makes sense to continue to scale and build. So, Jacqueline, I'll go back to you. I just wanted to pause
Yeah,
and
no, it's good. I think a lot of people that try this, Tamara, they might have a bad experience where maybe they give someone a buyer and it doesn't go well. They have to take it back. Or they're just a control freak, which many of us in this business are. And it's just hard to hand that buyer off. Like you did it because something more important came up. But what would you say to someone who either had a bad experience with it or is afraid to do it?
Um, The bad experience part. I did actually have a bad experience right out of the gate
Okay.
because of my experience and also maybe I was a bit of a control freak, but also when you're closing that much business or you're closing business,
Mhm.
just handing it off to anybody, is everybody is different. Humans are different and humans handle things differently. Humans talk differently. And so my expectations could be different from someone else's expectation, even if they did the job just fine.
Mhm.
So, and that's what happened to me in the beginning. I had one gal that continued to work for me. She was good at being a real estate agent. And then I started to get complaints from clients because she would show up and not be dressed properly and all these different things. And what I realized was I didn't share my expectations with that person. And so I actually slowed down for a minute. I did have a couple of clients that said, I thought I was going to work with you. Why am I not working with you? It was the way that I delivered it, the pass off, the handoff, and me being involved in it. So I sat down and I wrote an SOP, a standard operating procedure. What is my expectation in this? And once we did that, my showing specialist, at the time, Nicole, she was with me for 3 years. We even had scripts that when she would show up to show the buyers, she would say, "Hey, Sarah, we're looking at the house. Tamara, I just saw Tamara. She said to say hello to you, whether she saw me that day or not." Um, Sarah walks into the house. The buyer says, "Man, I love this house. Tamara thought you would love this one. Here's what she thought that you would stand out to you." Just small tweaks like that, but also setting up your expectations of how I expect you to respond to the client, how I expect you to show up, and just be clear on that.
It's good. I kind of laugh because I hear that a lot, and I always want to say, well, did you marry and are still married to the guy, the very first date that you ever went on? And because people have bad experiences with other things and it doesn't prevent them from doing it again. And so yeah, you might have some growing pains, you might have some bumps in the road, some setbacks. That's to be expected. And we're going to actually be doing a webinar in April, and we're going to dive really deep into the showing partner model. So if you are at the beginning stages of, or just even thinking about doing what Tamara's describing, where you're stepping maybe not out of production, but back a little bit, leveraging certain pieces of the business, or you might be a team owner that kind of skipped that part and you're struggling to scale. That's always my piece of advice is when people, you might have several agents on your team, you did at the time. And if you're having a hard time scaling, go back and run this model yourself. I think it's important. So we're going to do a webinar on that just on its own. Tell us, did your income go down? So you're now passing buyers off. You're leveraging also in your personal life, you said.
Yep.
So a lot of leverage is happening all at once. Tell us, like, financially what happened.
Um, in full disclosure, probably for the first 3 weeks, I like slept every weekend because I hadn't in a long time.
You took
So
some time off.
I took some time off. But then honestly, not really. I know that in the industry, sometimes markets shift, but how I looked at it is I knew that I was good at negotiating. I knew that I was good at client conversations. And so if there was ever a dip, if there was ever a lull in production, I saw less listings on the board, it's kind of like I would turn up the faucet and get in more real estate conversations. So I started to focus on those things that I could control that would have a direct ripple effect in there. But no, I did not notice any big dip in production at all or revenue
Okay.
at all. Yeah.
And so your income stayed stable.
Well, so here's why I have a hard time answering that question. In full disclosure, I
Mhm.
really didn't know what my income was before.
That's true.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, like, I wish I did. I wish I could tell you, like, this is how much, but I didn't track it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I knew we had cool stuff and we had money in the bank, but I literally cannot tell you. And so when we got super focused on what is our need every month and what is our want, what I can tell you is when I flipped, and I did it in stages, and we can talk about that. I didn't
Hmm.
just pull out of production and be like, okay, I'm done. I
Okay.
really think it's important to have it in stages.
Hmm.
And so as I pulled through those stages and making sure as I went to pulled out a little bit more that the foundation was stable, I've never had a month that I've gone below my need. I've never had, I'm able to track where I've got a profit and loss and I like track all the numbers and know all my percentages. So is that an okay answer? Like, I wish I could tell you if it did, but I didn't know my numbers before.
I think what's important about what you said, and if we don't go back, I think a lot of us missed it, is that you said when you started leveraging things out to a showing partner, that you knew the activity that you needed to do in order to get more business. And that is that predictability in our lead generation models that, most, I know before we became business partners with Place, we didn't have that was organic. And so I think that's like your activity had to increase from a lead generation perspective because you couldn't do the same amount of business, right? You had to do more in order to net the same. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to make sure because that piece, like, it's so important to know where your business comes from and you've got to know your numbers. You've got to be running those monthly P&Ls to know where those are at.
Yep.
And I think too, it's really important to highlight that, like, I'm imagining that weekend when you had four buyers to go out and show, and that you handed them out to your agents, and that you came in on Monday and all four were pending. So when we talk about doing more production, the production, it's not more hours. It's
Mhm.
your responsibility shifts from being the showing agent to being the lead generator, right? The person that's building the relationships that bring referrals, and then you're focused on the negotiation aspect. So you're not just jumping out, and maybe our title of this, like how to get out of production, um, makes it sound like an abrupt event, but it was more of a process and a transition over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
So tell us, um, operationally, if there were things that you needed to build or strengthen or shift in order to support this, or was it just primarily your time shifting focus? Anything with like the structure of the team?
Well, in my case, I did already have a team. I did already have an operations manager. We did have the systems built behind us. So I didn't have to do that. I did need to build a showing specialist plan. And as I went through, excuse me, we created additional plans. I think, if I was coaching someone or advising somebody on operational side of it,
Mhm.
I would say that anything that you do more than once, so we have virtual assistants as well. So anything that you do more than once, there needs to be a system or a plan behind it. And I was kind of the cog in that wheel because I was always, moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. And so one of the simple things that I did is everything that I did, I would do it on Zoom, I'd record it, and then that would be the training guide for them to put the SOPs together. So I would figure out kind of, what are you doing right now that you're doing over and over again? And there should be a system behind it. At this point, when I was transitioning from being 85% in production and transitioning out of production, we already kind of had the operational side set. Um, I would think the one thing that we had that I didn't use on the operational side that I will say is our tracking and our scorecard and our sales funnel. The tools were in there
Hmm.
to actually track all of this, and I just wasn't using it because I was running forward so fast. So, operational wise, slow down, figure out what you were doing. I would say that's another thing. You said what you needed to build, but I had a lot of stuff built that really wasn't moving our team forward. So to also kind of purge and audit and get clear on what are we spending money on, what systems do we have, and is it driving production, and is it helping our agent partners make their life easier or drive more production? I found there was a lot of stuff that we really actually didn't need. So that
Hmm.
would be the biggest thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like you got to start, transitioning into being more of a true CEO of your business. And I actually remember when, yeah, you didn't know numbers. Like you were like, I'm not a numbers person. That's the story that you would tell yourself and others,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, and I think that's really common. Like you said, you were kind of embarrassed of it back then, like ashamed of it. And then you start realizing, wow, that's like a lot of team owners don't know how much they're making. They don't know their financials for their team. They're subsidizing the team with a lot of their revenue from their own production. And that's really challenging to make adjustments when you don't even know where you are.
Hmm.
So I love that your first step was getting clear on what you need to make, but then and what the team needs. And then I think it was also just an overall gaining an understanding of your team's financials.
100%. Yeah.
So if you were to do this all over again, um, what would you do anything, I guess I should say, differently to do this faster or differently? Like what did you learn that you would do differently now if you were to do this transition over again?
I think I learned that, and maybe it goes back to the control thing, the control freak that you talked about. I think I learned that when we control something like production, when I
Mm,
can control, I can control my production. I can control going out and selling showing another buyer, that it felt in control and it felt safe. um, until it wasn't, until one day I woke up and I couldn't work, right? Like
mm,
that was clear to me. So that's kind of was my lesson in that. But what I would do differently, do it sooner. And the next thing I would do is do it sooner. And the next thing I would do is do it sooner. Um, if that was one thing that people can walk away with and go, okay, I'm going to do what Tamara said or don't do what Tamara did, don't wait so long. Do it sooner. I was unclear on how many things in my life that I was doing, personal and business, that I could do simpler. I was overcomplicating everything.
mm,
And even like I'll say on a personal note, we've been talking a lot about business. Even on a personal note, as a wife, as a mom, um, my husband would barbecue, right? But otherwise, I usually was doing the cooking, and I love doing the cooking. And a lot of the times, like I'd be running to the grocery store on the way home to get dinner, to race in to cook dinner. Like when I made my list, and I encourage everybody to do that. And honestly, I still do that to today, but I do it quarterly. I will sit down and go, what does this last quarter look like? What have I been doing? And because it's so easy to take on something extra and then go, wait, it's taking me over here and my vision is over here.
mm,
So, like even just something simple like that for dinner, I would, on Sundays or Saturdays, go to the grocery store and buy dinner for the week, and I'd have 3 or 4 meals cooking at the same time, and then I'd throw them in the fridge ready to go. And but the reason why I wanted to tell you everyone's heard of like prepping dinners for the week, right? But the reason why I wanted to share that story with you is because as I started on this mission, personal and business, how can I make things simpler in my life? How can I leverage? What tools and systems do we have that can help with that? Um, that is a ripple effect to your people that you're working with and a ripple effect to your family. And again, one of those pivotal moments, I was at home and I had a busy week that week, and I had made some comment of that I interpreted as positive, and my kids did not. And I was like, oh, thank God I made dinner ahead of time. Like, you just, I'm tired and blah, 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 and I'm going to throw it in and dinner will be ready soon, kind of thing. And my daughter, and I want to say at the time she was maybe 10 and she was the oldest, maybe she was 12 in that zone, anyways. Um, Her and my two sons, and my youngest son at the time was 6, they came up with kids' cook night. And they're like, what if we were responsible for one night, Mom? And I'm like, a second. So for anybody who has kids that is on the call, kids cook night, we instituted that per their request. And the ripple effect, we should do a call just on the ripple effect, because the things that you do, like I was doing it because I'm like, I was getting exhausted. I needed to leverage my time. I wanted to grow the team, and I knew I didn't have enough time in my day. So leverage was for me through the showing specialist model, but multiple different ways to leverage through the systems and everything allowed me more time to focus on what you called the highest producing dollar activity. That I knew that if I just focused on this, everything else would fall into place. But then everybody else around you can sees that and follows that. And so like the learning lessons, um, and this goes back to your question of like, what would you do differently? Like when I look back on it now, I feel like I robbed my kids of some life lessons. I feel like I robbed my agents of growth by
Mhm.
being so focused on my own production. Once I
Mhm.
stepped out of that, and you asked about like, did production dip? It didn't, because then I was able to spend more time and quality time and training and coaching the people that were in my world. What would I do differently? Do it sooner. I waited too long.
Yeah.
The impact was big, and the longer I waited and looked back, I wish I had had a bigger impact sooner.
Hmm.
One of the things that I've heard you guys say is right is coming back down to that net. I think most people's they're what makes them most nervous about quote unquote getting out of production is that their true net income is going to go down. And so one of the mistakes that I've seen is that most team leaders and operators do not run their P&L with their personal production as them paying themselves like an agent. And so I know that was how we used to run it. And so I would just encourage everyone on this call to look at the amount of production that you brought into your team last year and pay yourself at 50% or whatever percentage and model that your team is on, because
Hmm.
we pay ourselves. I know all of us, we pay ourselves the same as we pay our agents. And so we truly know what our business profit is. And one of my best mentors, this quote always comes up. It's the value of our business is only worth what it is when we are not in it. And so if you ran your P&L with paying yourself as an agent, you would know what the true profit of your business is. And that's what we're all working to grow. Okay? Is that bottom number? Would you girls agree?
Absolutely. I think too, then you can see, okay, if I were to replace myself, even if it takes 4 people to replace me, because some of the people on this call, it would take 4 or 5 people to replace you because you're just a unicorn, you know? Tamara, you're a unicorn. And so I think that like if you don't know that, then it is scarier to step out
Mhm.
because you don't know what you need to get to. Which kind of transitions to my next question is what does your production and your team now look like? We didn't get to the after story. So how many are you selling? What's the team production and how has this helped you be a better leader?
remind me of those questions when we get there because those were some good ones. But the first one is when I was 85% of the production, we were closing about 1.5 million in GCI, a million, 1.5, 1.7 in GCI.
Mhm.
Um, and now we're just under 3 million in GCI. Um, Last year was the lowest percentage that I've done, which was 5% of the production. And I still today feel like when I say that, sometimes I feel guilty and I'm like, no, no, don't feel guilty. Feel good about it. And so we've increased production. I've decreased the amount that I am responsible and contributing for. But then what that does is that gives me more time to find people that are looking for opportunity to join our world. It gives me more time to attract production, so attract people and attract production and increase production. Every once in a while, like because I'm looking at the numbers, sometimes I'll just get on the phone and start calling to increase production just because I'm not where I want us to be, right? So I'm still very heavy in production, but I'm driving production to help my agent partners hit their goals. The Back when this started, we had the one location in Everett. I do have additional expansion locations now.
Mhm.
And I think you asked one of the questions about leadership. Do you have the exact, was it like what
Just
changed in leadership?
how did it, I'm assuming that it gave you the ability to be a better leader. And so just how did it impact your leadership?
Yeah, I for sure. I think on a simple, easy scale to describe, when I was out selling that much real estate, a lot of the conversations with my agent partners with, do you got a minute as I'm flying down the freeway? Like it
Mhm.
really gave me the time as a leader to sit down and look at their numbers and look at the sales funnel, which is the conversion
Mhm.
chart that we have to be able to really fine tune. And sometimes it's just small little things to tweak that could completely change your business. I'll give you an example. One of our agents, I will say she's half my age. She's a younger gal. And her sales funnel was every single one of them was above National Association of Realtor stats. Every one of them except for one. And the one that was below the National Association of Realtors stats was appointment held to appointment signed. And she knew her scripts like every morning, like we're power up. I'm listening to her do her script. She knew what to say. She's a sharp gal. So I was just asking questions, trying to figure out as a leader, as her coach, as her business partner, what is going on that I could help her increase this production, this conversion. And she said to me, she goes, well, so I'm like, then what did they say? And what did you say to them? And then what did you say in the buyer consult? And she said, I don't know. They say I love you, and I'm like they say I love you, or you feel like they no, they say like I love you. I'm like, okay, that's pretty. They like you. And they're like, I love you. We want to work with you. But then they don't sign the buyer broker agreement later. And I was like, hold on a second. So, long story of this example is because she's young, the reason why I started out with young, she didn't realize she could actually print a paper off and have them wet sign it. She thought everything had to be electronically signed. So if you're flying around being massively in production, you don't have the time to really dig in and figure out what exactly it is the skill or just the knowledge that could make difference in somebody's life. And so that afternoon, she went to the buyer consult, immediately got it signed. And by changing that one number, this year she's on pace to triple her income from last year just by switching that one number. So I would say that was just, I wanted to share that actual example of leadership. Before I
Mhm.
didn't have the time to do it. It gives me more time to pour into everybody and figure out how do I help them get to the next level. Yeah,
That's such a
I would say
great example. of what's possible when you're able to be present and not leading while flying down the highway, as you said, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And so the one thing that I did want to kind of end with, based on that and on leadership,
Hmm.
I felt like I was kind of like the Wile E. Coyote leadership. Now I feel more knowledgeable. I know my numbers. I know the path to help people get to production. And going back 17 years ago to day one when I met my partner, and you know this story, Jacqueline. I'm not sure, Sarah, if you've heard me say it before, but um, after meeting with Ben, we sat there, we were at PF Chang's, and on a napkin, he drew two circles. And he drew an outside circle and an inside circle on the PF Chang napkin, and he put it in front of me. And he said to me, he said, "That's my job." And I'm probably an over complicator. I recognize that in my world. He is a oversimplifier. And I was like, what does that mean? And he's just like, you and you're coming on the team with me and we're partnering together. My only job is to make my circle as big as possible, that you can make your circle as big as possible and not outgrow me. And
Hmm.
fast forward 17 years now, I feel, and going through that, I think I understood that, but the only reason why I feel where I'm at today is because um, my retina almost detached. So this is why I wanted to talk about it, is the importance of figuring out what you are good at, doubling down on that, leveraging out everything else. Um, what I wanted to end on is, and I can tell you multiple stories. Like I have, my mission and my goal is to help change people's worlds, no matter what that looks like. And you can ask any of my people. I always ask them, like, we sit down, we have a full conversation on what is your need, break down your expenses. What does that look like? Like I know how much my people are paying in mortgage. I know how much they owe. Like I know all of that before we get into business together, because I think it's a critical piece of the path. And
Hmm.
I feel now I'm finally at the spot where I can look down and see those, they're no longer two circles, they're three circles. And you know, seeing the evidence and seeing, like, one of my business partners, she's been with me just for 3 years. Um, she netted over $200,000 last year. And I won't say her name, I'll let her tell her story, but she is good at telling this story. She was 3 months late on her mortgage. And to today, a year later, she netted over $200,000 to our family. She purchased a house. She bought a brand new car. She paid off all her debt. And she wants to help me grow another location that's close by to us. And I'm committed to make those goals happen for her and collectively, look at that, Sarah, for the whole
The
organization.
teacher.
And in the last 60, or yeah, the last 60 days, we have five new team members that have joined us at that location. And two of them are already in production, pending and having a closing soon. So at the end of the day, if you get anything out of what I said, I hope you get out of do it today and not tomorrow. Do it sooner, because you can have a bigger impact on people's lives. And it's cool. I love where I'm at right now and helping people. That's my mission.
I love that it's coming full circle for you, right? You
Hmm.
learned how to do it, and now you're teaching another person how to go follow and do it the same, right? And that, I think that's probably the biggest, it's that's the power of the right partnerships, right? It helps you build personally and professionally, but the right partnerships, you don't go backwards in income, you go forward. And I think that's the power of the right partnerships. So we do it for other people, and I know that's what our business partner does for us. So
Yeah.
I love that story, Tamara.
And
Me too.
I will say, because I have a little baby obligation in my head here, I do also have another business partner, Toby, in my Everett location. And because Toby has stepped in and he's been with me a little over 5 years now, and helps me run that location, it's allowed me to kind of step into more of a full CEO leadership role than I've been in before, which has given me the ability to then build the circle to work in Seattle and help Dina grow Seattle. So just that ripple effect of it comes full circle for sure.
Awesome. Well, this was awesome to hear your story. Even though I knew your story, I learned some things today. What we're gonna do is this was supposed to record automatically and it didn't. So luckily I caught it fairly early on. And so we'll send the recording out to everyone that registered for this webinar. And we do have a favor to ask everyone here. I'm also going to send you a link to our next webinar, which is on April 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to dive into the leverage model and how to implement the showing partner model without negatively impacting your client experience. So we're going to do that April 22nd, all three of us again. And what we want to ask you is if you would please invite one or more, at least one person though, that you know that needs the leverage model in their life, that needs a showing partner, that needs what Tamara discovered through her detached retina. But we want to help people learn this before they are in a medical emergency where it's forced on them. So we need your help to spread the word, essentially. So we'll send the link to this recording, the link to the next webinar, and we are just thankful for all of you who took your time to be here today. Your time is so valuable, and we hope that you'll join us on this journey because we're going to be doing these monthly, and they're all value for team owners. So if you have topics, pain points, things that you want to learn about, please email us, let us know what they are, and we'll definitely get them on the schedule for an upcoming webinar. Any closing thoughts, girls, ladies?
No, I'm excited to go on this journey together and continue to grow this group. So I would love to hear the topics that come up because I think this is a great start and where we're going. So thank you both for everything, the vulnerability and the sharing, and I'm excited to continue on.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And the only
Thank
thing
you,
I want to
Tamara.
add is showing specialist. The next call is going to be talking about that, but so many other ways to leverage.
Yeah,
So if you're thinking showing specialist isn't for me, one, I'd still show up and listen to it. But
yeah.
also there's going to be so much more about leverage on that one as well.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.